Breaking tonight, former Homeland Security Secretary Jeh Johnson becoming the latest top intelligence official to reject the idea that there was some grand scheme between associates of President Trump and the Russians to tip the election. Watch this exchange.
At the time you separated from service in January of 2017, you have seen no evidence that the Russians were successful at changing voter tallies or voter totals.
Correct.
Had you seen any evidence that Donald Trump or any member of his campaign colluded, conspired, or coordinated with the Russians or anyone else to infiltrate or impact our voter infrastructure?
Not beyond what has been out there open source.
So Jeh Johnson also expressed his displeasure with the DNC after he said they refused to turn their servers over after they were hacked.
I recall very clearly that I was not pleased that we were not in there helping them patch this vulnerability. DHS does not have the power to issue a search warrant or get a search warrant and go in and patch their vulnerabilities over their objections.
Weird, right? Raising the question, what was in there that they perhaps didn't want authorities to see? Why wouldn't they turn over those servers to get some help? Here now, a man behind many of those questions today, House Intelligence Committee member, Congressman Trey Gowdy. Congressman, good evening. Good to have you with us as always.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So what struck you most about your conversation with Jeh Johnson today?
A couple of things. He's in a unique position to answer one of those four tranches. Martha, again, remember, we're looking at what did Russia do, with whom, if anyone, did they do it? What was the government's response in 2016? And he was the Secretary of DHS at all relevant times. So I was really interested in what the Obama administration knew and when, and what efforts they took to thwart the Russians or to notify potential victims. You just played a clip where we had a victim, the DNC. And not only did they not cooperate with Jeh Johnson, they didn't turn the server over to the FBI. So I think it's a little ironic to now criticize, as some Democrats are, Jeh Johnson and Jim Comey and others for not doing enough in 2016 when you had a really good piece of evidence you didn't bother to turn over.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a head scratcher when you take a look at it from that perspective and you put yourself back there during the election and you remember the emails that were leaked, very embarrassing for John Podesta, Neera Tanden, a number of people, and that was the main thing that Democrats pegged their election loss on. They said, look, because these emails were released, they call it the Russian hacking, which is apparently where it came from, but you have to remember the content of it. It was embarrassing emails that came out. So at that same time, they were asked by the FBI and by DHS, give us your servers, let's figure out who's getting into them and how. Why would they say no? Why would they not want to cooperate with that investigation?
Oh, well, let me hazard a wild guess that there may be something else on that server they didn't want law enforcement to see. I mean, that's where you start. I don't like speculating, but I have dealt in the past with victims who would not cooperate with investigations. And typically the reason is there's something else you don't want law enforcement to see. There is no reason to not allow DHS to patch or fix a vulnerability in the DNC system. And heavens knows there's no reason to not give the world's premier law enforcement agency, which is the FBI, the evidence they may need to stop another attack from hurting someone else.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be that the words email server were somewhat toxic at that moment. If everyone remembers the political environment that was going on, and Hillary Clinton's email server was all the talk at that point. So maybe, you know, the idea that someone wanted their server made them proprietary over that server. I want to get you into something else before we run out of time, and that's Loretta Lynch, because we've now learned that based on Jim Comey's testimony, he opened sort of, you know, a new Pandora's box of her influence on the investigation into Hillary Clinton's email server. What do you want to question her about, and what's the process with regards to her now?
Well, Martha, I don't know that House Intel would be the proper venue for those questions to take place. That may be House or Senate Judiciary. I am always interested when any person we hire to work for that blindfolded woman holding a set of scales, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, does anything to put his or her finger on the scale. And if it is accurate that she asked Director Comey and others to refer to the investigation as a matter and not an investigation, that is the Attorney General putting her finger on the scale and doing so for political reasons, and that's what undercuts your viewers' confidence in the justice system.
So James Comey said that that made him queasy and that he felt that she might have a conflict of interest, and that's why he took over the investigation. Would you want him to come back and testify more on that?
I would now, in fairness to Director Comey, he has been before House Intel in a closed-door setting, and he did extrapolate more on that and other reasons, frankly, that he appropriated the decision to himself. But to the extent that my Democrat friends want all of this aired in public, even some of it which maybe shouldn't be aired in public for classification reasons, I would love to hear her explanation of why she wanted to call an investigation a matter. I did it for 2 decades. We never referred to it as matter. So I don't know what her point was, although I think I do know what her objective was.
Potentially political. So we'll see where that goes. Trey Gowdy, thank you very much. Good to see you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
The special election in Georgia's 6th congressional district was more hype than, I don't know, anything since Y2K. Democrats spent tens of millions of dollars trying to flip that seat. They described the race as a referendum on President Trump. The press covered it breathlessly. What happened in the end? You know the answer. The Republicans had a fine candidate with way less money and much less Hollywood glamour, Republican Karen Handel, and she won anyway, pretty easily, actually. She beat Democrat Jon Ossoff, who turned out to be far more popular in Marin County than he was in the 6th District of Georgia. That shouldn't surprise you, though, since he didn't even live in that district. Democrats have gone 0-4 in 4 contested special elections this spring. The question is, are they learning anything at all from these defeats? Joining us now is Mark Green. He's a former New York City public advocate. He's created an online shadow cabinet to oppose the Trump administration, and he joins us now. Mark, do you think Karen Handel in any way colluded with the Russian government to win this seat, or is there another explanation?
Actually, Bob Mueller is going to announce tomorrow that he's looking into that. So, you're a step ahead.
Thank you, Mark. So what is the answer? I mean, short of Russian intervention, this is a sincere question. You've run a lot. You've been around politics a long time. It seems to me that Ossoff, with all he had going for him, should have done better than he did. Why did he lose?
You know, a tie in football, of course, is like kissing your sister. This was a tie, if you look at it 2 ways. One, he won. This is not horseshoes. You don't get a point for coming close. However, she won, rather. It was a district, of course, where the predecessor, Congressman Price, had won by 24 points. She spent $30 million counting outside PAC money. You know, you have to do it for one, you have to do it for the other. Why did the Republicans think they had to spend $30 million, which is unprecedented, to win what was otherwise a safe seat? So in 4 special elections, all by definition Republican districts because the incumbent went to the Trump administration, they won. The troubling news is, on average, the Democrats in each district lost but closed 15 points of what was an average 20-point win in the prior election. You apply that to 2018, that's a problem.
Yeah. Oh, sure. And in the next 50 years, the Democrats can retake the House. I have to interrupt you. President Trump has taken the stage. The second he begins speaking, we're going to go to him. It could be imminently. Really quickly, though, Karen Handel did better than Trump did in this district, and she was outspent 7-1. I mean, let's be real. Is there a lesson here, or no lesson at all? You guys are doing great.
Neither. Each side should be wary. If Republicans think that this locks it for them, they're whistling by the graveyard and they don't look at data.
No, I don't
Hillary
think it
Clinton
does.
won 23 congressional districts now held by a Republican. And the average flip in the first mid-term election is 38 seats, and Trump, of course, is at a record low for an incumbent president at this point in his term. You put that together, I don't think anybody can confidently predict 18, other than if there's a wave election against Trump, which is possible, because of his numbers.
We're waiting for it.
Gerrymandering,
but honestly,
the levies of gerrymandering stop that.
I get it. But is there really no course correction necessary for the Democrats? You really look at yesterday and you're like, you know what? Good job, guys. Let's keep doing what we're doing.
Well, newsflash, forget the Russians. There are going to be 435 red, blue, and purple districts up, not just 4 Republican districts.
Well, there he is.
The Paris Agreement would have cost America millions of lost jobs and billions of lost dollars and put us at a permanent economic disadvantage. It's a catastrophe if we would have agreed. And they all say it's non-binding. Like hell it's non-binding. When we get sued by everybody because we thought it was non-binding, then you can tell me it was non-binding. I was elected to serve the citizens of Iowa and Pennsylvania and Ohio and Michigan and Wisconsin and Florida and all 50 states and all 320 million American citizens.
President Trump at the rally out in Iowa tonight going after climate change. Gregory?
That was the best part of the night. What he said, he didn't say that climate change was a hoax. He said that it was a bad deal. And that's what he does for a living. And there's nobody on this earth that can refute that it is a bad deal.
Well, the American people seem to...
Well, they didn't read the deal. He actually read the deal.
About doing away with it.
He read the deal.
Not only that, but somebody who is not talked about probably enough in the administration for influence is the EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt. He's a former Attorney General of Oklahoma. And what President Trump said tonight shows that when he presented to the president his side of what he thought would happen, that was the winning argument for President Trump. So Scott Pruitt, I think, is probably MVP at the moment.
And what about the ethanol argument since you were in Iowa? Jesse?
Well, he's pro-ethanol, and I think that's smart politics if you're going to try to win.
For a conservative, you're pro-ethanol now?
Listen, if I was running for president and I needed to win Iowa, I'd be pro-ethanol, too.
I think this is a very powerful moment. This is something his supporters believed in. It's fulfilling and checking the box on another campaign promise. He's not going to be bullied by Europeans when he stands for Americans, and I like it.
You like that?
I do. Don't stick to a bad deal. Don't throw our money around Europe. They can make their own, and we'll make our own good deal.
So what if we all melt? It doesn't matter.
But Juan, you're right that he should be against ethanol because that's a bad deal.
Well, you know what? We're all going to melt. Doesn't matter. Be pro-Trump. Pro-Trump. Final thoughts next.
Welcome back. President Trump firing up a crowd tonight in Cedar Rapids, Iowa at his first rally since April when he marked his first 100 days in office. The theme, Make America Great Again, of course. He took the opportunity to thank his supporters and celebrate the big victories for Republicans in both Georgia and South Carolina last night.
It's always terrific to be able to leave that Washington swamp and spend time with the truly hard-working people. We call them American patriots, amazing people.
And then President Trump turned his sights to one of his favorite targets, the media.
But they built these studios, CNN. Whoop. Hey, the camera just went off. I can't imagine. It's covered live. The camera just went off. I can't imagine why. This phony NBC television network. They actually had one of the people say, you know, it was a little rainy last night. Maybe that was the difference in Karen's race. Can you believe that? But if she had lost, they would have been there for weeks talking about this. This would have been the greatest defeat in the history of American politics. When she won, when they said, projected winner is Karen Handel. Then they said, we switch to another program.
Okay, so obviously the president feeling very good about his person in Georgia, Republican Karen Handel winning yesterday after a lot of the mainstream media says it was very tight and this was the Democrats' chance to win. Pelosi, big boogeyman out there. I think Pelosi was rejected. I think she's the bigger foil than President Trump sometimes.
Yeah, the Dems tried to flip the seat and they ended up in the toilet, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, the Dems made a big deal about this election, so you can't let them not make it a big deal now. You got to hold them to it. They said it was a referendum on Trump. No, it's a referendum on Dems, and you could say, okay, you need to go back to the drawing board, but even their drawing board is toxic. And here's why. They did a couple of things wrong. Number one, they relied on celebrities, especially annoying celebrities who are coming in and telling you how to live. That's not good. Also, you're calling your adversary names. We've learned that this doesn't work. You go on Twitter, there are people saying, vote Ossoff, don't be a bigot. Don't re-elect another bigot. They called the side bigots. That's also wrong. But the biggest thing that the Dems did, and I don't even want to tell them this because I don't want them to win, is that they traded life experience for identity. So if you had a man with experience, let's say in the military or in corporate world, but you had an undergraduate from Evergreen College. The undergraduate from Evergreen College would gain more respect, even though she or he doesn't have life experience, but has an identity. So a party that took identity and made that more important than life experience, ended up with an inexperienced candidate who's being pushed forward by a bunch of rich liberals from the left coast and the right coast, and this is what happened.
And it's exactly what happened. And tonight did not look to me, Dana, like a president in his 30s in an approval rating. I mean, he looked pretty fired up.
Short in age.
No.
He felt like
look like he was very high energy.
Very happy, yes.
But I mean, either the polls are fake or he's an unpopular president pushing a very popular agenda.
Well, he's certainly popular there and in the room, and they were smart, I think. He takes rare trips to states out in the Midwest that helped elect him, but when he does, the people show up and they're entertained and they're energized, and it further solidifies their support for him. Like, that support is not going to go anywhere. Everybody in that room will remember this night for the rest of their lives, and there's something special about that. President Obama had that ability. Bill Clinton had that ability. I would say that George W. Bush had it. Reagan had it. So it's special. Hillary Clinton never had that type of connection. The other thing about she had an internet connection. She did, a private one. Another, I think, mistake that they made down in Georgia was that they took a district where Trump only won by 1 point, and other Republicans had won by a lot before. So they thought, aha, this is what we can do. So they send in somebody. But even if you're a Republican that didn't vote for Trump, or you reluctantly voted for Trump, that doesn't mean that 4 months later you're going to switch and vote for Nancy Pelosi.
Right.
That was, I think, a mistake that they made. And if you look, though, the Democrats have been smarter in other races. They are recruiting more moderate Democrats that are pro-Second Amendment, pro-business, pro-military, that they might have better luck in the districts where they might actually be able to win. This district wasn't one of them, and they wasted a lot of money.
So they're going more of the Republican messaging, and that's what I think is going to pay off, because people want some change. They want things to be handled in Washington the right way, and that's what President Trump has promised and delivered. Big mistake that the Democrats made, besides all the money that they dumped into Georgia, was nationalizing that race, making a referendum against Trump instead of making it about that district. Big mistake, and you would think that they would learn, but not so much, because every time they do the same thing and they fail miserably. And what we're seeing is it's just strengthening the base and the popularity of President Trump amongst his supporters. And that's why when you look at the polls, that he is in fact very strong with the people that supported him. He's got 96 to 97% of the people that cast a ballot and a vote for him, they would do it again with confidence. So now all he's got to do is get some other people over to his side. I don't think it's going to be that hard to do, because if he has strong job numbers and continues to improve the economy, voters will care about that.
Juan?
Well, I just think that's a fantasy. I mean, I think what happened in Georgia last night was that Republicans turned out in astounding numbers, according to all the political strategists. And what you see is party loyalty carrying the day. It wasn't a mistake for President Trump and the Republicans to nationalize the election, because all of a sudden, with ads about Scalise being shot or Kathy Griffin holding up the head, all of a sudden it was like time for Republicans to rally, even as Republican support for President Trump is going down. That's why he goes out. He goes to this kind of rally. He says, hey, look at show cameras, show these crowd. He's really talking to Republicans and saying, stay with me.
Pro-growth economy, he will succeed again.
That's right. It's about the economy, stupid. I think it was your guy that said that.
You're going to be on Capitol Hill tomorrow. Who are you meeting with, and what are you going to tell them?
Well, we're going to talk about how we handle moving towards 2018, what the lessons are from these 4 special elections, and laying out a meeting with some of the House Republican Conference, trying to lay out a positive strategy for job creation, for modernizing government, for getting to a better health system, the things that really matter to the American people.
All right. Very quickly, you said you think that CNN, the president should cancel relations basically with CNN and exclude them from the briefing room? Really?
Look, when Harvard reports that a network is 93% negative, they're not a news network. They're an attack network. Why play with them as though they were serious? These people find excuses. They have talking points to attack Donald Trump all day, every day. Macron, the new president of France, just kicked two networks out because he said they were propaganda networks. Well, I regard CNN as a propaganda network.
Well, the prior administration suggested the same thing about Fox News, and the other news organizations stuck up for us. So, you know, do you think that's fair play?
Right. I don't think Fox News was ever anywhere close to 93% negative. I actually think you were remarkably fair and balanced. And I think that that's the difference. I mean, explain to me why, if you're looking at a reporter who you know 9 times out of 10 is going to be negative, why would you allow them to ask a question? What good does it possibly serve the president?
Well, you know, all the important questions need to be asked, and there needs to be transparency in the White House, and they need to answer questions. Now, the thinking is that that's going to happen more like once a week, so we'll see where it goes. I got to leave it there. Newt Gingrich, thank you very much. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
We all know the result of last night's elections, and we're all a bit disappointed here this morning. It's a tough day for Democrats and in the losses that we sustained.
They thought the elections last night were going to be a referendum on this president, and once again he proved never underestimate him, and that the American people put him and other Republicans in place for a reason.
People think that because someone or something is unpopular among the chattering class within Washington and New York, that somehow applies in Georgia or in South Carolina or in many places in Florida. And it's just not true. And that disconnect was brought to light in the presidential race in 2016, and I think it's been brought to light again last night.
The fallout from the special congressional elections last night continues. As you take a look at Georgia, the race board here, this is Karen Handel with a big win. Bigger than expected, actually, over John Ossoff, the Democrat. In South Carolina, a little tighter race than everybody thought, with Republican Ralph Norman winning, but not by as big a margin as once thought. The president tweeting out late last night, well, the special elections are over, and those that want to make America great again are 5-0. All the fake news, all the money equals 0. Then this morning, Democrats would do much better as a party if they got together with Republicans on health care, tax cuts, security. Obstruction doesn't work. As we pointed out last night on the show, 4 congressional special elections wins for Republicans, the one in California. Javier Becerra, 2 Democrats running. Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, editor-in-chief for the Weekly Standard, editor-in-chief of LifeZette. Laura Ingram, Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics, co-founder and publisher, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, Steve, fallout and implications.
Well, boy, the discussion of these races certainly fell off the radar today. I mean, this was going to be the kind of result that defined the politics in this country through the midterm elections and was going to presage a Democratic sweep. And somehow people aren't talking about it as much in the media as you might have thought. Look, I think this was clearly a good night for Donald Trump. He has every right to crow about it. I think Republicans would be wise not to take too much comfort in these results. These are specific races. In the Georgia race in particular, both candidates kind of ran with Donald Trump at arm's distance. And, you know, Marco Rubio's point about the chattering classes in D.C. not liking Donald Trump is I think, short-sighted. His approval rating is still 36-37%, depending on the polls. That's not something that Republicans are going to want to take going into midterm elections. There's a lot that needs to happen between now and those midterms if Republicans are going to hold their majorities.
Well, one of the things I heard was that Nancy Pelosi, in some of these districts around the country, is less popular than President Trump. She just came out moments ago with a letter to Democratic colleagues. The House Minority Leader says, as we take inventory of the special election results, it is important to note that we made important progress in the 4 special elections this year. The House was in play before the Georgia race. The House remains in play now. There are 70 Republican-held seats, more competitive than Georgia's 6. The President's numbers are in the 30s, and our base is energized. We must now put forth our message. Every effort was made to win last night, but we don't agonize, we organize. Organize inside the House, mobilize outside for the good of the American people.
San Francisco doesn't sell in most of the country. I mean, I love San Francisco. It's a great place, but San Francisco values, Nancy Pelosi likes to talk about them a lot. You see, it seems like last night, even though the margin of victory, I think, could have been bigger for Karen Handel if she actually embraced Trump a little more. I have the counter-conventional wisdom going into this race. I think she should have campaigned with him. I think the margin would have been 5 points, not the 3 points. There's a resistance in the country, I think, to the resistance. I think people want to see points on the board. They want to see some legislation that makes their lives better. And Republicans need happy voters. Democrats need to have an agenda that actually connects with those kind of more middle-of-the-road, independent voters who turned away from Obama and Hillary last time and turned toward Donald Trump. I do not think that they have put forth that agenda. I think they're good at resisting and blocking and the Russia, 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 but I don't think Georgia cared about Russia much. I don't think South Carolina did. Certainly Montana didn't. So I think Republicans have challenges, disunity. But I think the Democrats still don't see why they really lost this election, last election cycle.
Tom, take a listen to Senator Murphy and Congressman Crowley.
The fact that we have spent so much time talking about Russia has been a distraction from what should be the clear contrast between Democrats and the Trump agenda, which is on economics.
As much as I think people in Washington tend to focus on the issues of Russia and the president and the Republicans' inability to get much of anything accomplished, we need to focus on the local issues. That's what gets Democrats elected.
Boy, Tom, that's a different message than we've been hearing from Democrats on the Hill.
It's starting to dawn on them that what's been going on in the Beltway has been totally disconnected from what's been going on in the district. But even beyond that, Democrats have this issue. You already have some Democrats saying, look, the reason that John Ossoff lost is because he wasn't strident enough. He wasn't progressive enough in that district. And that necessarily isn't the best lesson for Democrats to take away from this. The other part of this, too, is, look, you can carpetbag in Senate races, but you got to have someone from the district. And to have, 82% of your money coming in from Hollywood and New York and all these other places, that doesn't go over well with people in these local congressional districts, especially ones in the South.
That debate question, when Karen Handel turns and says, who are you going to vote for? And it's just silence from Ossoff because he couldn't vote. He didn't live in the district. Charles.
Yeah, they say he lived down the street. I think it was 3.5 miles. A very long street it turned out to be. Look, I think the key here is what was in Pelosi's message, ironically. She said, we have to get our message out. They don't have a message. This is the same reason that Hillary lost. The left among the Democrats has a message. Sanders has a message. Nationalize health care. Raise taxes, increase regulation, impose income inequality. That's a message. That's actually an ideology. It has some attraction, but it's a minority. That's not going to win for them. But the center of the Democratic Party, the old Clinton, center left that dominated the party in the 90s and succeeded, it's dead. It's mute. It has nothing to say. So having nothing to say, they have now fixated on Trump. It's all on the resistance, all about Trump. What they learned last night is that is not enough. That isn't enough to energize people. I mean, think of the big picture. Why do they want to win the House? For one reason. Not tax reform, not jobs. They want to win it so they can start impeaching the president, undoing the election of 2016. That is the biggest mistake, political mistake in political strategy I have ever seen, and I think people understand that's not a worthy cause.
All right, you're talking about Democrats at this health care rally. They did have something to say. Just take a listen.
We have a very simple message. No hearing, no vote. No hearing, no vote.
Together, we are going to keep the pressure up here on Republicans to bring Trump care out of the shadows into the light.
The #1 priority from now until next week when we vote is to be loud.
We don't know what the bill looks like because it's been written by 13 male Republicans behind the closed door.
That's not true anymore. There were many different inputs to this health care bill that is informing, Steve. It is behind closed doors. We're expecting to see the Senate GOP version of something tomorrow. But as far as Democrats, they're still dealing with the issue of these insurance companies like Anthem pulling out of these different states. They're focused on, obviously, the transparency issue.
Yeah, I mean, Democrats are lucky that they're not going to be judged on their ability to rally crowds at events like this, because they wouldn't do very well. Look, I think Republicans are in a tough spot on this. I mean, it isn't many of the same arguments that Republicans made as indictments of Obamacare and the process of Obamacare can be made today. Democrats are making those arguments. I think they're making them somewhat effectively. The bigger problem with Republicans is numbers. If you look at what's happening in the Senate, you've got conservatives, you've got who are asking for certain things, you've got moderates who are asking for other things. They can only lose 2 votes, and it doesn't appear right now, at least, that they're going to be able to do it.
At this moment, President Trump is arriving in Iowa. Air Force One has touched down, wheeling in there. Be a big campaign-style rally tonight. We expect to hear a lot about those special congressional elections. Maybe a little bit, Laura, about health care. What about this debate as we look live?
I think the president is smart to take this message on the road. Getting back to economic renewal, tax cuts, tax reform probably won't be able to happen this year. But this is where he's really good. He's really good at rallying the people to his agenda. Make America great again. Let's clean up Washington. It's proving really difficult for him. There are swamp monsters in both the Republican and the Democrat Party that prefer to gobble him up. But he's putting up the good fight, and I think he has to rally the people in a way against Congress. It's a little risky, but I think that actually is a sweet spot for him. Look, he's going to say, I like these guys, they're good guys, but my goodness, they've had 7 years. They need to bring a piece of legislation to my desk that has enough votes so we can actually pass some legislation. I mean, Mitch McConnell has to know how many votes they have for something, and just at this point, they've got to pass that. I mean, it's ugly, but that's what he has to start doing.
Tom, what if President Trump isn't that much of an albatross to Republicans across the country? What if it's totally misread here in Washington as 2016 was?
Well, certainly the White House is hoping last night has some residual benefits for what's going on in Congress, that they've got some folks that'll put a little steel in their spine, particularly in the Senate, because it is a dicey situation. And Trump sort of amplified that on his own by calling the Republican bill mean, and reportedly in this meeting. I mean, that sort of shows you what the tension that's there. So Mitch McConnell, I think they are going to put it to a vote. I think that's one of the things they learned from last time, is they're going to go for this thing, and they don't know whether they're going to have the votes, whether they're going to get 42 votes or 50 votes, but they are going to put senators' feet to the fire, and really it'll come down to the argument, do you want to be the senator who keeps Obamacare in place, and do you want to bear that burden? Because otherwise, that's what's going to happen.
Last word as we wait for the president to exit Air Force One, Charles.
We saw the problem with the Democrat strategy on health care when we just showed Ron Wyden saying that our purpose between now and then, our task, is to be loud. Loud is not a program. They're obsessed with the process, secrecy. Americans don't care one way or the other if this plan was hatched, in a winery or pulled out of a refrigerator. All they want is something that works. The president's problem is that he stepped on the message, and he's going to have to get the 51 in the Senate. I think it's doable, but as long as they talk about substance, not process, they're already ahead of the game.
Even more than this could be seen as a win for Trump, because, of course, it wasn't really, it was more of an establishment district. Big loss for Democrats, and shows what happens if you connect a candidate to Nancy Pelosi. Right, Rob?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is a guy who everybody had their hopes pinned on for the Democrats and for the sort of progressive left and the media left. And they just kept forgetting that that's not how you win. It's a weird kind of a superstitious thing where they thought if they put a lot of money into this and they could turn Georgia 6 from R to D, that somehow all the other districts in the midterms would follow suit. They'd say, well, if they did it, we have to do it. That's not how it works. I mean, had the seat switched, then maybe you could make the case that there was sort of a movement afoot in the
How? Oh, they already lost 3.
Right.
It would have been
you could.
one
I'm
of
just
4.
saying.
Hey, the way my count is 1 of 4. You're still losing.
But you can't make it happen and then say, all right, everybody fall in line. That's not how it works in America. You have to actually win the people over.
Right. If you can have a movement, you can have your protests, but if you don't get votes, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, protesting is not victory in any sense. And I think that what you just said is, to me, one of the most interesting things about it. They tried to make it a referendum about Donald Trump. It was a referendum just as much on Nancy Pelosi.
Exactly.
And the fact that she is so toxic in so many parts of this country and has been for 14, 16 years now, it's staggering. And I really don't understand how Democrats don't throw her overboard. But the other thing that I think is interesting is if this was a referendum on Trump, and I sort of quibble with that a little bit. Not only did he hold, he improved because he won that district by 1 point. She won it by 4. So not only is he doing just fine, he's actually getting more popular according to the media and the Democratic narrative.
So these Democrats spent, and Robbie might note that a lot of celebrities put a lot of money into that as well, from Hollywood going into a Georgia 6th race for whatever reason. But they
for whatever reason.
So they spent $30 million. They got 124,000 votes. They've spent about $250 per vote. Charlie, I think they would have been better off saying, "I'll give you $250 if you come out and vote for me."
Yeah, gift cards.
Those are Jeb Bush statistics.
I was thinking about poor Jeb. Yeah.
But it's the same thing that we saw in the general election with Hillary Clinton. You know, she had all of the Hollywood, all of the firepower behind her, and it didn't do her a bit of good.
So to your point, Charlie, this is, I think at least once a day on this program, I like to bring up how absolutely insane it is for the Democratic Party to continue to put all of their eggs in the basket of Nancy Pelosi and old baggage, including Hillary Clinton and that type of leadership. It's just something that's stale. It's rejected at every turn. And I don't know how many races they're going to have to lose, Rob, for them to get that memo and get out of their own way, come up with an economic policy and message that's going to resonate
That's the
with
problem
people.
right there. They don't have that.
Yeah.
They don't have the this is what we are all about. They have this is what we can't be about. And it's the anti-Donald Trump.
It didn't work in November, and it's not working now.
And maybe it might if there's something that's failing. But, you know, look at today. I mean, the home prices are at a record high today. So you can say, I hate Donald Trump, and he's horrible, and he's bad for the economy in the country. But when you look at what's going on, boots on the ground, the economy is turning around in a strong manner.
They're mean to me. That guy's mean to me. It's not a campaign platform.
But it's worse than not having a message. It's actually not having a messenger. I mean, past 8 years, were all in with Barack Obama, but they lost the state houses, they lost the House, they lost the Senate, they lost all the local elections. The country really did turn R in a lot of places. So where are you going to find this? Normally in a political cycle, what happens is the young Turks come up through the floorboards and pop a cap in the old dudes. They take them out in the middle of the courtyard and say, you're done. Right. The new people. There aren't any new people in Democratic
Party. I love the idea, though, Rob. They have to have a sellable, a palatable idea for Democrats to say, you know what, I can get behind him. That's what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump stepped into the void of the establishment Republicans. People were tired of it. They saw the same people over and over, the Romneys and the McCains. And Trump said, you know, I'm not one of them. I'm going to be completely different. And then he sold his message.
Plus, what he did is you had Hillary saying, you know, I'm with her, and he was, I'm with you. Right?
Well, I think it's both, though, Eric. I think Trump had a great message that obviously connected with a lot of this country. But it was also the man. People actually did, many people, because my mom, I don't think she understood what the message was with Trump's campaign for about 6 months. Seriously, she was into Donald Trump, his personal narrative, his story, his success in the business space. And that was important. So let's look at this guy here, this Georgia guy. What, a 30-year-old documentary filmmaker, congressional aide. I mean, no shade, but come on. It's not really an aspirational candidate.
Pajama Boy ran for Congress.
Right,
the Pajama Boy.
All right, well, Hollywood was one of the biggest backers of John Ossoff's failed campaign. Everyone from Samuel L. Jackson to Rosie O'Donnell to Chelsea Handler threw money at it. Rob, you know these Hollywood folks. Did this turn off actual voters? I mean, Democrats used to do a really good job of being, we're the party of the people, we'll help you. And now it's like, we are the party with the most famous friends. And I don't think anybody really cares.
I think when it comes down to that, I don't think they really care. I mean, I think that, you know, what Hollywood can really do really well is believe in a fantasy and live in a fantasy land and spend money. Those are two things we can do really well. And this is a perfect race for that, because you have to believe in the fantasy that this guy's going to come from nowhere, from living outside the district and win a fairly suburban conservative district in Georgia. And then you have to believe that the answer to your problem is more money. So that's how you get, the mummy, and that's how you get King Kong Skull Island, and that's how you get Ossoff and the Six.
Somehow,
it just doesn't work,
Somehow, some way, the Democrats have managed to become the party of the elite. And you look back at Mitt Romney, I think that was the Achilles heel in his candidacy. And it's, my goodness, I don't know how they've done this, and I don't know how they're going to get themselves out of it.
They need a face. They need a face.
Go ahead,
but they need an agenda and a platform as well. Bernie Sanders had the right message. He was just the wrong face for the right message at the right time.
Although it is kind of interesting to look at all the people that Bernie Sanders has endorsed since the election, they've all lost. So there's some sort of kiss of death going on there. But the media loves to talk about the problems in the Republican Party and the dissension between Trump and Republicans in Congress. But I've long felt that Democrats, the same civil war that has occurred in the Republican Party, is bubbling up in the Republican Party. I mean, in the Democratic Party. And the problem is that it's a coalition of special interests. And then they play race and gender and religion politics and stuff like that.
It's more than that, though, Charlie, because as Eric points out, I have a lot more friends in the Democratic Party than he does. And I talk to these young Democratic Party leaders, and they are thirsty. They are, having better ideas, I think, than what we're seeing. I think they are being intimidated by the old guard leadership within the party, and they are a little bit afraid, to their own detriment, to step up and step out and move the party forward.
I would tell you that if you go back to 2 years or so, when the race was evolving, if Bernie Sanders' message was placed on a celebrity type that was able to deliver the message, was likable, Charlie. I mean, and it wasn't Hillary's turn. Remember, it's my turn. Everyone thought it was her turn.
Hillary.
You probably would have a Democrat
even if
president.
just Hillary could have gotten out of the way. I mean, look at how Nancy Pelosi was even in this race, but just the connection to Pelosi was enough. That was enough. Is there connected to the old Democrats?
And they did only beat him by rigging the primary.
Yeah.
But you get to be a better athlete when you practice, right? You go to practice, and you get to be a better politician.
Practice? Are we talking about practice right now?
Yeah, that's
I
right.
have to go there.
That's right. You get to be a better politician when you run. I mean, one of the things Bill Clinton could really do is campaign, and because when he was governor of Arkansas, he'd run every 2 years, which meant every 2 years he had to get in a car, drive around, get out of the car, and some guy would come down the driveway and start yelling at him. And yell at him and yell at him and yell at him and yell at him, and then he'd have to win that guy over. You learn a lot about people. You learn a lot about what they care about. You learn a lot about who they really are and what their concerns are, what keeps them up at night. When you actually have to meet them and campaign with them, when you're not flying in a jet, you're not in an office at MSNBC, you're not blogging.
Remember when they did that Hillary Clinton rides the subway, and she apparently practiced for hours for it, and then she couldn't slide the card? What were you practicing? That's the only activity required.
Right. Ordering a Chipotle and riding the subway.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to actually interact with people. And humans, human to human. And again, these people have just been politicians instead of humans for so long.
They ran someone who had not driven a car, Hillary, in something like 30 years. She said she hadn't filled up a car in 30 years, and then wanted to go ahead and compete with the populist message of Bernie Sanders. If there was no Bernie Sanders, it may be a different race.
Yeah, I don't drive, but that's for the safety of everyone else on the road. So that's a philanthropy on my... Yeah, absolutely. Right. No, I'm not very good at it.
Way to be a woman of the people.
Yeah, I have to be. It's for all you. All right.